Well, thanks to everyone who is here. A huge sense of gratitude for anyone that attended this today, because the work that this took to get to this location is almost 3 years. And I can't even begin to explain to you all the bells and whistles that had to get tied to get to the point where we are now. Jim Martin, Henry Marks, Phil Latham, Gabe Torres, some of the people that brought us to this point. Well, thank you. So there's somebody I want you guys to note about. One of the most important persons in my life is Harvey Pratt. Harvey was in the movie, wrote 2 books together. Harvey is in a bad way. Very bad way. So, whether you pray, whether your silence goes to another God, I ask you for 1 minute of prayer for Harvey. Thank you. So, let's get going on this. We have some outstanding researchers here today that took part in the movie, and I have nothing but gratitude for everyone that participated. I know that when this goes out to the public, I'm going to take massive amount of assault on what was brought up here in the movie, and the ape or gorilla side has threatened me to the point before where I couldn't do a conference in Kelso, Washington because of death threats. The Bigfoot community can be really tough. Not you, because you guys are some of the nicest people I've ever met. And many comments today that everyone who was dealt with that audience has just been filled with kindness. I talk about the kindness revolution. That's what gratitude is, and you guys showed all that today. Thank you. So, one of the things that Jim Myers said in the movie is that it's like the Republicans and the Democrats, opposing views on the topic. Well, the biggest source of information in the Bigfoot world, by many people, is the BFRO. And we have 2 people in the audience that were at the very top tier of BFRO. And I'm going to call them up, and we're going to talk. And since BFRO is that center point of the most sightings in the U.S. that people can go and read about, but are you reading facts? Or are you reading what they want you to believe? So the first person I want to call up is Joe Hauser, the owner of the Montana Vortex. Come on up, Joe. Joe lives 20 minutes from my house. I go to the Vortex all the time. It's one of the most unusual places on earth. Other people can say a lot of things, but thanks for being in the show, Joe. Have a seat. So, the center point of this conversation has to do with your time as you migrated through the Bigfoot world. And you came to the place where you are today as the owner of the Vortex and understanding that Bigfoot has abilities that you didn't think might have existed at the very beginning. One thing that I say at conferences is that I have never met anyone that started on the paranormal side of Bigfoot and migrated to the ape side of Bigfoot. But almost everybody I know started on the ape side and migrated to the paranormal side. Now, when you were at that top tier at BFRO and you were writing reports, tell the audience the process by which you left.
Well, one day I tried to get into the database to do some research, and my password and everything had been taken out. I didn't have access to it. And I contacted one of the administrators, and she said, well, basically, Matt Moneywaker told me to take you out of the BFRO because he didn't like the fact that you were pushing the paranormal side with orbs, UFOs, and Bigfoot all connected. And so anyway, that's how I got out of the BFRO.
What year was that?
That was probably around 2003, somewhere in that area.
And what role did you have?
I was a curator with the BFRO. And the investigators would do the reporting and do the initial investigating, and then a lot of the times the curators would follow up on everything that they had come and check up on stuff and like that. And one thing we noticed was that if there was reports that came through that had orbs associated with Bigfoot or UFOs or any type of paranormal activity, a Bigfoot disappearing in front of somebody, those reports never made the database. They were kept out. And there was other researchers that also experienced the same thing.
So when you say it didn't make the database, that meant that the public never got to see it.
Right. It did not. It did not. It wasn't a public report that anybody could go and read. So there was a lot of reports out there that never made the public database.
So how did you feel that your voice couldn't be heard?
Well, I didn't like it. I felt that that it wasn't, that we weren't really showing the true facts of what was happening and what people were experiencing and seeing out in the woods.
Were there other people that you were working with at the time that experienced the same shunting of their reports?
Yes. There was other people that also found out that reports weren't being put on the database if they had any paranormal activity on it.
Tom Powell, why don't you make your way up now? So, Joe, that was the first time you saw the movie.
That was the first time I saw the movie. I thought it was great. What do you guys think?
So, if you didn't know, Tom Powell, I've seen Tom at conferences. I've had him at my own conferences. Joe and I have invited him. This man right here is one of the best presenters at a Bigfoot conference you will ever see, folks. If you see him on an agenda somewhere, sign up. He's half stand-up comedian, former science teacher. You're outstanding, Tom, and I'm not kidding you.
Author.
You're very kind.
So, Tom, Joe kind of laid out his path out of the BFRO. Could you explain yours?
Well, Joe and I were contemporaries, first of all. And when he got kicked out, I think it was right before I did too. I did the unforgivable sin of publishing a book, and that was called The Locals. And what I did was basically mine this trash that Joe was talking about, where they round-filed all the reports that didn't square with. And here was the thing. You had these guys like Lauren Coleman, and maybe Krantz was even still alive, John Green too. But there was significant pushback against any alternative examination of these so-called facts. And so I understood that. And in fact, the argument, as Lauren articulated it to me, was that what you're doing, Tom, is making it more difficult for science to embrace this topic because you're dragging in this stuff that is counter science. And so I think you could argue that they had good intentions. They were trying to gain a wider audience for this. And so, yeah, sometimes you squelch the points of view that make that more difficult. Now, the only difference with me was that I stupidly took statistics in college. And so I could see that there wasn't just one person claiming something, but there was a whole bunch of people that were saying things that were, by today's definition, paranormal. And they couldn't all be in cahoots. They were all over the country. They were publishing their contact information. I could pick up the phone and call them. And the one account that you mentioned in the film was the guy who said, I just want to know if anybody else saw this because that thing dissolved right in front of my face. And that was the guy in Timber, Oregon, standing in a clear cut, and it just went zzz. And he said, I just want to know if anybody else has seen that. And I said, well, yeah, actually, I can point to at least 10 people who are describing very similar things. So this is where I knew that there was more to the story, even though it wasn't a very popular story, and it was really unpopular at the time. So when I published The Locals, I was out just like Joe. And he never even read the book, our buddy Matt. He thought it was all a send up on his mercurial ways. But it wasn't. It was just that I was mining their trash and saying these things probably need a little more scrutiny before we discount them. And so that's what The Locals had in it. There was a chapter on the orbs. That was really well done, by the way. And I feel a little bit vindicated at long last to see that stuff is getting wider discussion, because when I first put that out there, the only support that I had was this cat named Henry Franzoni, who said, and I said, dare I say these things? And he said, oh no, there is an undercurrent. In fact, I'm going to give you more information. And he was the one who said, it's the red orbs and the yellow orbs that are most commonly associated with things like this. So he really gave me the confidence to put something out there. And much like you get shot at. I mean, figuratively at least, hopefully not literally. But when The Locals first came out and tendered some of these ideas, it was definitely fringe. And guys like Lauren Coleman, who were the mainstream at the time, I was a pariah in their eyes. So. It's just great to see more open discussion of these things. As always, we can talk about them, but proof is a very difficult thing, probably impossible.
Okay, well, speaking about proof, so you've got that ape gorilla side, and you've got the unusual paranormal side. One thing I didn't get to discuss in the movie, but I will discuss in conferences, is we have DNA on Gigantopithecus and Paranthropus, which means that all of the hair samples that we've collected, the DNA samples, have never come back to Gigantopithecus or Paranthropus. Well, if that's what we were talking about on that ape or gorilla side, where is 1 ounce, 1/10 of 1 ounce of evidence that they exist in North America?
Well, there isn't any. I mean, there's only been one actual skeleton of a hominid in the ape species found, and it was found in the desert in Oregon. And it's
Fort Rock.
Fort Rock, yes. And that's the only ever any primate that's ever been found in the fossil record in the United States. And it wouldn't add up to what we see as Bigfoot today.
So, Tom, where are these academic types hanging their hat on that duo to say that that's what we're looking for?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So the academic types, Krantz, others, they're saying Gigantopithecus or Paranthropus. How can they hang their hat on it when there's no evidence?
Well, there is. The question is, how good is the evidence? There are teeth of Gigantopithecus.
Not in North America.
Correct. Well, we got Clovis Man was in North America, who was probably wiped out 12,000 years ago in some sort of, cataclysm that we now call Younger Dryas. But it is much more recent than what we're finding in places like Africa, for sure. That's a tough one. One thing that Charles Darwin said when he was asked, why aren't there fossils that bear out evolution in the 1870s? And he said, maybe it's just that we haven't been looking long enough. And that idea was dismissed by his contemporaries. They said, we probably have all the fossils we're ever going to find in the 1870s. You know, how wrong-headed can one be? But how, modern doesn't one feel at their time? And so when finally this guy, Thomas Condon, who was a minister, oddly enough, in the Dalles, Oregon, found the evolution of horse foot or toe, the fossils that showed the evolution of the horse from 5 toes to walking on a single toe, which is what all horses do today. Thomas Condon brought those fossils to Charles Darwin, and Charles Darwin wrote him a letter and said, thank you, you saved my butt, because they were saying that there was no fossils and there never would be any found, and you found them, and you're a man of the cloth. And of course his other ministers turned to him and said, what are you doing? And he said, I just call them like I see them. I dig them out of the ground, and I run from the Native Americans to get them to science, and whatever happens after that is not up to me.
So you guys both know that giant skeletons have been found in North America.
Indeed. Yes. Lovelock Caves.
And
in Montana, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And throughout the East Ohio area. So just so you know, in the book, Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants, I placed in there a series of articles from major newspapers across the U.S. when these giant skeletons were found. And the vast majority of the time, they went to the Smithsonian, who claim now they don't have any.
They don't exist.
Yes. Well, if Rob Alley is in here somewhere, he reminded me of the story of Ailes Hurlichka, who was the guy who buried all these fossils. And he was hired by John Wesley Powell in the late 1800s, no relation. And he was also the guy who first came up with this idea that all Indians migrated from the land bridge down through Alaska and so on. Anyway, Ailes Hurlichka was the head of the Smithsonian when all this material was being sent there. And if there's anybody who's probably the most shall we say, culpable when it comes to burying all this scientific material. It was he, and he had an agenda. He had his idea of how anthropology happened, and this was flying against his paradigm, and that is probably a big reason. He was also into this eugenics thing, which had to do with this idea that white folks are somehow evolutionarily better, and all of this foolishness that actually is an underpinning of Nazi philosophy.
So, can we turn the house lights up and the stage lights down and have Marty come out? And what we're going to do, somebody could turn the lights off on us so I can see out there, and turn the house lights up. We're going to entertain some questions from you guys. So if you have something for them, me, now's your time to ask away. Marty has the mic. You have a question, raise your hand. Oh, come on.
There we go.
Movie wasn't that good.
Okay. Should I stand up? Okay.
Behind you.
Oh, okay. Hi, Dave. I'm curious why some people in the Bigfoot community, whoever they may be, would be making death threats to you over a difference of opinion, I suppose, in whether it's a flesh and blood ape or something different or more supernatural. Like, if you just had a different opinion from them, then why do they feel the need to go to such great lengths to try to intimidate you or censor your speech? Do you think there's anything or any one organization behind these people that are up to these antics, these cowards?
Can I do this?
Just wondering.
So the only thing that Dave did not present in this great piece of cinematography is this pushback that you sometimes experience as a researcher from some entity that you don't know where it's coming from. I had my mail searched. I can show you the sliced open envelopes that were retaped. I had, back in the days of landlines, I had my phones tapped, and the places that we were working with the residents to try to, find some documentation, they were tapped. There is pushback, and I'm pretty sure it's not the Sasquatch themselves, although that happens too. Whenever you study them, they study you, and this is an axiom of, spycraft, is that the spying goes both ways. But certainly there is an entity or set of entities, and we always assumed it was federal government, who knows, the alphabet soup boys. And the question is why? What is it? And he alluded to this in the movie. What's the big secret here that we aren't smart enough to know and understand? And I thought that was one of the best lines of the movie, because it spoke to this thing that we experience as researchers, where we're being spied upon, and it feels a little bit threatening. I had things stolen from my house, and I don't know who it is, but it's definitely a part of it. I do think, too, that if you stare it down, they get bored and go away. Maybe it's just intimidation is all that it is. But I think they want to see what we know. And toward that end, we always have this game we used to play at these conferences like this. And that is, amongst ourselves, the presenters, we would say, okay, find the government agent. You know there's one in the room. I think it's that guy at the end of the first row right there.
I was thinking.
But if anybody else wants to come up and say, I'll keep my mouth shut. But Tom, yeah, I know. Anyway, I know it's a joke. But there is a serious side to it. And another thing that Ron Moorhead often said, and that is, if you haven't had electronics failures in the field, you haven't been doing this very long. Right, Ron? And so this is kind of a part of that too, is like, I don't think that's the government. I think that's them manifesting their power, but they don't want to be studied either. For some reason, they wish to remain, out of sight and let us stumble along as imperfect humans. And as he said in the end of the movie, maybe someday we're going to be worthy to know, and that they'll step out of the shadows. I hope that day is true, but I don't think I'm going to live long enough.
I agree with Tom about the actually trying to keep us quiet, you might say. And I know years ago when I started talking about portals at the Montana Vortex, a lot of people came in and they were interested in that, and it wasn't real mainstream then, as it is now, and NASA even admits that there's possibility of portals. But one day, I was going to go into the gift shop and start a tour of the vortex, and my cashier said, "Look at the guys over in the corner. I think it's the men in black." And so I looked in the corner, and sure enough, there's these guys dressed as we would think the men in black. And two of them had sunglasses on, one of them didn't, and our young cashier, she's about 16, 17 years old, she said, "The guy without the glasses, look at his eyes, his pupils are slits." And I said, okay, so the tour wasn't quite ready to start. I was mingling with the crowd of people that were going to go on the tour. I worked my way over to those guys. And, "Oh, hey, you guys going to do the tour?" "Yeah." And the guy looked right at me, and his pupils were slits. And so I said, "Well, we're going to get the tour started." So I went and did the whole tour and talked about everything I normally talk about. We did all the demonstrations. Well, all three of them stood in the back with their arms folded. All three of them did not participate in any demonstration. And at the end of the tour, when I didn't have to go do another one right away, they came up to me, and all they wanted to know was what I knew about portals. They asked me one question after another. "Have you opened a portal? Have you seen a portal open? Why are you doing this type of research?" And basically, I was trying to be a little bit evasive. And then finally, I just said, "Well, hey, you guys look like the men in black. How about I get a photo with you?" And I pulled my camera out, and I handed it to a lady who was standing there looking. And the one guy, he never put his sunglasses on. He just looked at me, and he goes, no photos. We'll be back." And about a year later, sure enough, 3 different ones came back. And they did the same thing. They wanted to know, they did the whole tour, never participated in anything, wanted to know what we knew about portals and if we had opened them or anything like that. At the same time, we had many times these unmarked black helicopters would fly over the vortex and circle around it. Mail was missing. Things we knew that should be coming. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on based on the possibility of talking about portals, or the possibility of there being portals.
Another question.
Well, this young, right? I promise all the answers won't be that long.
Marty's got the questions there, Tom. Marty's right there.
That's okay. Go ahead.
My question pertains to Sasquatch people and healings. I noticed that in the film you didn't really elaborate, and no one in particular elaborated on healings from the Sasquatch people.
That's a slippery slope. A lot of times, if you meet somebody who has a cold on the 4th or 5th day, if they saw a Sasquatch, maybe the 6th day they're feeling better. But if they hadn't seen anything, maybe they would have gotten better anyhow. It's hard to say exactly. And if there was a good example, I'd entertain it, and I would have interviewed the person, and I would have put them out front. But I haven't seen that. Go ahead, Marty.
Hey, Dave, I had a couple quick questions for you. One was I was wondering why you chose to come here to debut your film. And my second question was if you could explain if you found any connections between the missing 411 content and some of your Sasquatch discoveries, and if you could give some insight into that as well.
So a lot of podcasts have bent over backwards and lied incessantly saying that there's a 411 connection, and I know it, and I am not saying it, which is a complete bunch of lies. You will read my books, you will find nothing in there in 411 about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, except one story out of Fresno County where a guy went out there with a 16-year-old girl up in the mountains in the Sierras. The girl disappeared, and he said Bigfoot took her. That's it. Nothing else in my books. Why are we here? Because this is the biggest, probably, conglomeration of people that believe in Bigfoot anywhere in the United States.
Yep.
Another question.
Could I say something about the healing, though, first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've interviewed many elders of the Blackfoot tribe over the years, and they have a long oral history of Bigfoot. They call him Mistaki Tapi, which means large mountain spirit. But they also believe that they're healers and protectors. And one of my good Blackfoot friends, he was one of the spiritual elders of the Blackfoot Nation. He used to come to the Vortex, and he knew all of the ancient songs. And there was 3 songs that they would drum and sing to Mistaki Tapi to call him in for healings and to protect the tribe. So that was kind of their belief of it. And he had a Blackfoot prayer, too, that he taught me. It's Ayo Kanatani Kimak Dokiman, Iyo Kanatani Kimak Dokiman, Mistaki Tapi, Oki Tapi. And basically what he's asking is that he's asking the grandfather and grandmother spirits and Mistaki Tapi, Bigfoot, to come in and protect us and heal us of anything that we need to be healed by.
So on that opposite end of this token, there was a lady that was doing Bigfoot research who claimed that the cancer given to her was by a Bigfoot. And L.A. Marzulli, while I was interviewing him, told me he believed that Bigfoot killed Scott Carpenter. So that's why it's such a slippery slope about the belief system that I don't really even touch it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you did a beautiful job on your movie. My name is Kathleen Meyer, and I'm from MUFON, and I want to tell you that that is changing. It's beginning to change. I've been an experiencer all my life, and I know and I see all the things that you are talking about. You have one side thinks it's the woo, and the other side thinks it's not. So it's starting to transition, and we have the same discussions at all the conferences and when we go and talk to people. So I'm really happy to see everybody here. So thank you. I just wanted you to know that that's starting to change.
And I will attest that what she's saying is true, because I've been invited to 4 or 5 different MUFON functions to talk about Bigfoot. And there's been Bigfoot articles on the front page of the MUFON newsletters in the last 3 years. So, yeah, it is changing. And whereas people in the past said, oh, MUFON would never touch it, I've said on big radio shows, I don't believe that anymore. I think it has migrated to a point that they're willing to talk about it. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a search and rescue official for Humboldt County in Northern California, also on a wilderness EMT. And I would like to ask you this. Are there patterns in location, time, or environmental conditions that correlate with signings suggesting a dimensional portal?
Say that last sentence again, please.
Are there patterns in location, time, or environmental conditions that correlate with signings suggesting a dimensional portal?
I would say that the number one pattern that I'm seeing personally is having to do with what's called karst topography, which is limestone bedrock, which is caves. In other words, it seems to me like a large part of the Sasquatch phenomena emanates from a subterranean realm. So, I kind of explored that whole thing in my latest book, but it is something that a bunch of people are also looking at. Oklahoma, the one place in Oklahoma where you get the Sasquatch activity, limestone topography, caves, because limestone bedrock dissolves in water and leaves these caves, and then they can or can't be expanded from there. Southern Oregon, the only place in Oregon where you get caves. Seems to be a bunch of Bigfoot activity that emanates from that. And so on and so forth. There's other places as well, New Mexico. So, caves is one. Summer is always one, but, it could be that people are out during the summer. So it takes two things to have a Bigfoot sighting, a person and a Sasquatch, and we just don't go out and do as much in December as we do in July. So, certainly weather is going to facilitate sightings. Other than that, forest areas, for sure. Henry Franzoni once had, I mentioned him before, he said it's not out of the question that what is going on is that the Sasquatch inhabit a subterranean realm where they do some very heavy lifting and they need a vacation. And when they want a vacation or when they're given some vacation time, they go to the surface and cruise around and go to places like Crater Lake and Bryce Canyon. Sasquatch sightings often happen in very beautiful places, and so we speculated that maybe these guys are on vacation from the heavy lifting they're doing subterranean. So there's a different point of view.
I agree with Tom about the limestone. Dave knows because he watches the mountain from his house all the time, but every morning we wake up and there's this big mountain right across from us. It's called Columbia Mountain, and it's been a UFO hotspot ever since the homesteaders came into Montana before we even had the term UFO. But it's all limestone, and we sit on part of the base of that mountain where the vortex is at, which is all limestone too. And we've had 11 sightings of Bigfoot on the ground, 6 by groups of tourists. I've seen one, and 4 of our guides have seen one too. And there's a family there that have been there ever since I've been there. For 21 years, and we interact with them not on a regular basis. We're on their schedule, not on ours. But limestone is, I think, one of the things that is anywhere you go in the country. If there's limestone, you'll have UFOs, and you'll probably have Bigfoot sightings too.
So it could be that these subterranean realms is where the UFO phenomenon and the Sasquatch phenomenon intersect. In which case, maybe some of these UFO sightings aren't actually from elsewhere in the galaxy or beyond, but rather the UFOs really represent a manifestation of a phenomenon that's just as terrestrial as we are. It's just that they emanate from subterranean, and this is where there must be then subterranean readouts, hideouts, caves, secure places that are very, very large and have been improved upon. These aren't wet, drippy, cold, dark caves, but fixed up places subterranean where these paranormal phenomenon find refuge right here on planet Earth. And this is something that Native Americans have been saying for centuries, so I didn't think this stuff up.
Another question.
Oh, hey, to segue on that, there's a couple questions here. One is, what do the three of you think? Thank you, Dave, for all your hard work, by the way. What do the three of you think about, what does the federal government know about Bigfoot? Because what we're talking about with your segue there, Tom, is a lot of that's federal land, and your maps of Bigfoot congregations in the United States seems to all be around federal land. And do you guys have any comments about perhaps the logistics? I mean, for several thousand Bigfoot to be in the country, there's got to be remnants of their community, their logistics, their families, when they die. Where's all of that activity? So some of this, where is it? Where is it? It's got to be under federal land, and it's got to be somehow protected. I like your underground stuff.
So think about this statement. The government, our government, will never admit to what they can't control. Think about that. Personally, I don't think you're ever going to have complete disclosure on UFOs. And I personally believe that some of the UFO researchers out there know as much, if not more, than our government does on the topic. And the example of that is Skinwalker Ranch. Our government spent $20 million to Bigelow to come study the UFOs and the surrounding phenomena on the ranch for a number of years. Why would they do that if they had all the answers? And then on Bigfoot, if they knew what Bigfoot was and they knew that they couldn't control it, why would they ever admit that they knew anything? And Tom had acquired some paperwork from the government on Bigfoot before. I had filed a series of Freedom of Information Act requests on a case coming out of a national park where a naturalist, one of the chief scientists in the park, saw Bigfoot cross in front of it. This came from 2 national park police officers that were there that saw him writing the report, and he told them what happened. National Park Service says that those reports don't exist, never existed. So, a dead end. But why would they not admit it? I think it's because they can't get their hands around it. They can't study it per se. It's my own personal thought.
The fact that you asked that question means I have to withdraw my accusation you're not the federal agent in the room. Some say, I've been told, Scott Nelson said to me once, there is an office in the Pentagon for everything. Now, of course, what is the rest of our need to know? You know, once it goes into the Pentagon, it doesn't come out. But, you know, it's easy to suppose that if these properties of the Sasquatch species, if they are, their capabilities would certainly have tactical value if we could figure out how to harness them and do them ourselves. So, you know, government spooks have a long history of studying these phenomena in order to figure out what tactical value they have. I guess I go back to that. That's if there's a reason why we aren't being shared with more, it's because of the potential for some, you know, tactical advantage. Doesn't that make sense?
Could be. Well, I can't say he's my friend, but we've kind of touched base a few times. He lives down the road from us, and Dave and I met him one night in a restaurant in Columbia Falls. It's Robert Bigelow. And Robert Bigelow owns the property, not next to mine, but just down the road from it. And he's come to the Vortex before incognito to experience what's happening there. And year before last, he came in, brought some people in for a tour and stuff, and I got an opportunity to talk to him, and I've talked to him since then a couple different times. And he would love this conference today. He absolutely loves paranormal stuff. He started when he was a kid. If you've read it, looked at any of the interviews he's done, and he could talk about it all night long. But in one of our conversations about Bigfoot and the UFOs and the mountain across the road from us, and relating it to things that happen on Skinwalker Ranch, I asked him, I go, well, I understand everything that you classified there, and you weren't able to give the material to Brandon on the new Skinwalker program. And he said, yeah, that's true. And I said, well, why why did the government classify it? And he said basically, well, I can't tell you, but I don't think they want you to know what was really happening there. So that's just...
in other words, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
Right, exactly. And he goes, I don't think it's any big deal. I think everything could be released, but for some reason, they don't want you to know everything. And I think that's what we see all the way around with the UFO stuff, the Bigfoot stuff. They know things, and they're just not telling us. And I agree with Dave. There'll probably never be disclosure on some of these things. Just kind of keeps us on the hook.
Go ahead, Marty.
Hi, my name is Gary Gilnett. In the early 80s through the mid 80s, I was a missionary in northern Canada, lived amongst the Tlingits in the northwest communities of British Columbia, southern Yukon, and southeast Alaska. And after a year or so being amongst those people, and I lived with them, I was there just as a classic Christian missionary. And, but they began to tell me stories that I was not prepared in seminary to have a grid for. And my question is, they absolutely believed in what you're calling portals, that these Sasquatch would come in and out of our reality, I guess. But that I saw on one of the screens that they can mimic anything. I couldn't believe it when I saw that, because they told me many of the things that I would encounter in the wilderness, going from these little villages, we had a plane and we'd fly around and all of that kind of thing. And they said, much of what you encounter that you think you know what it is, it's a wolf or a bear or whatever, they said, and all of a sudden it disappears. They said, that is the Sasquatch. And I didn't believe them. I had in my mindset that, those things were demonic, that kind of thing. But my question is, have you run into that allegory or testimonies from people that not only do they take the shape of Bigfoot, but they can take other shapes? And I've been afraid to even ask that question in my circles where I'm asked, but I'm here tonight, and I thought I would see what you had to say about it.
Tell them that story about turning into a wolf.
Well, Ron, your daughter, Rhonda, I think she has told this story to you. You had broken ribs. I think you got thrown off your horse coming down the trail at the Sierra camp, and we're laying on a sleeping bag or cot, and Scott Nelson and Rhonda was there, and they saw a Bigfoot run across the open area there, and it went down by the river, and then it disappeared. It just ran out of their sight. But then your niece, I guess, you'd be the great uncle, Rhonda said that when her niece came up from the river, she was all excited and told her that, did you see the Bigfoot that ran down where you were at down there? And she goes, no, I saw a big white wolf run by. Pardon? And it made eye contact with her. Ron can probably tell it more, but.
Ron Moorhead, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. That was my daughter, or her sister. Oh, excuse me. There was a Bigfoot ran across where we were that night or that morning, and she saw it, and she knew Wendy, my granddaughter, was walking on a dirt road over there further away, and she thought, well, she'll see it when it goes by, so I won't be alone in seeing this thing. And she, when she got back, she didn't say, when did you see the Bigfoot? She said, Wendy, did you see anything over there? Yes, there's a big wolf came up right in front of me and stopped and looked at me, then ran up the hill. And a white wolf.
Was indigenous to the area. We don't have white wolves there.
There's not supposed to be any wolves there, right? But I tried to tell her it was a coyote probably. She said, no, it's a wolf, and I showed her pictures of it. She said, it was a wolf. So that's all I got to say about that because I didn't see it. I was hurting at the time. Anyway, let me say one more thing. Can I do that?
You got the mic.
According to science, how many people here believe in science? And most everybody believes in science. There's another science called quantum science. And most of you know I'm involved in that, but nothing, according to Einstein, according to physics, is just flesh and blood. We are not just flesh and blood. We are energy vibrating at a frequency. And according to Einstein, according to physics, if you find the frequency, you can change matter. So as far as them disappearing and all that, I mentioned this to people a while ago. Anyway, I just thought I'd say that part because we're not just flesh and blood. So these people that say that it's just flesh and blood or they're just apes over here, one or the other, nothing's just flesh and blood. See, this biological body might die, but who you really are is not going to die. Thank you.
Go ahead, Marty.
Hi, my name's Tara, and I have a question. Do you think there are different types of Sasquatch, like we have different types of bear, brown bear, grizzly bear, or black bear, grizzly bear, polar bear? And do you think some Sasquatch, like the ones up in Alaska and Portlock, Alaska, are man-eaters like some of the legends are? And also, do you think it has a difference in food supply as to how they act towards us humans when they interact with us?
There's an author named Bill Grimstad who lives in Manitou Springs, Colorado, and he wrote in one of his books that there's too many kinds of Sasquatch. There's dog snout ones, there's flat-faced ones, there's five-toed ones, there's three-toed ones, and ones that appear to run mostly on all fours and those that never do. So his confusion, his point of confusion was that there's just too many different kinds to actually represent different breeding populations. And so his conclusion was that the Sasquatch phenomenon is generated by the Earth itself. It's this Gaia hypothesis that the Earth, this planet, is a living thing that can manifest things for our inspection and consideration. And he just felt that there are just too many kinds of Sasquatch to fit with the conventional, rules of biology. So if you really want to get out there, it's possible that the Earth is generating this phenomenon, and that it's something completely apart from biological reproductive species and all of that. But there very definitely are different ones. Dogface, the ones in Louisiana, they get the three-toed ones a lot in the Honey Island swamp. And there's really tall ones, and the ones in Florida are really small, and we always assume that that's just because of environmental factors. But it could be that we have all of these different things that come and go from our world. Hard to rule it out.
Okay, just so the audience knows, Marty, the guy doing the questions, is the director and the initiator of all the Bigfoot cruises in the last 3 years. And his company is called Gather Up Events. September 11th of this coming year, out of Seattle, we're going back to Alaska, and this is the first time it's going to be a missing 411 cruise and a Bigfoot cruise. So, Marty, if you have questions, get to him, ask him. It'll be an epic event. We've already been booking people on board and speakers. I hope we'll see you there. Please go out and post on social media what you think of the film, good, bad, or indifferent. I'd appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here.
We almost made it.